So why are we together here today? The main objective of our meeting is to facilitate the discussion on more effective regulation of novel tobacco and nicotine products. Why do we need that? So I don't think I need to tell you that we are facing some issues. For example, there are so many new products being introduced to our markets. Existing products are being developed in a huge variety. It's really hard to keep up with what is happening. Manufacturers are making products that are circumventing regulation or are very close to the borders of regulation. There are so many products and ingredients on the markets that it's being very difficult to understand what people on our markets are using and what they are being exposed to and what this means in terms of health impact. Also, there are differences in implementation of regulation and also differences in national regulation between member states, which can cause cross-border sales and difficulties in, well, can hamper the effect of a regulation European-wide. So to work on all these things, this project called the Joint Action on Tobacco Control was launched in October 2021. I hope most of you know it, but for those of you who don't, it's a European funded project which took 36 months. So we have been working on this for the last 3 years with 21 countries participating and 36 institutes. And we had an overall aim of improving the implementation and enforcement of tobacco control measures in the European member states. The European Joint Action has a very broad scope and very different topics that we have been focusing on. But for today, we will focus on the work of Work Package 7, which had an aim of enhancing a better understanding of the properties, the health impact, and the regulatory implications of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes. What we try to do in Work Package 7 is, on the one hand, provide insight into which products are already on the market, what is already being done on a national level of regulation of these products and maybe also the newer products, but also to evaluate the use, the perception and health risks of these products. So to understand what do they mean for the health impact of their users. And also we wanted to collect data on adverse health incidents and suggest a way to do this in a harmonized way throughout more European countries. And for today, we want to share with you our findings, our outcomes of the work that we've been done in the last 3 years, and our recommendations for regulation. But not only what we want to share, but we also want to discuss with you. We want to hear from you, your thoughts and experiences regarding obstacles and enablers of effective implementation of product regulation. So what makes it difficult to implement our recommendations or product regulation in general? Or maybe what are good examples of what is working and how can we learn from each other to effectively establish a European harmonized approach for regulating these products and keeping our public safe. So practically after today, Work Package 7 will share 5 information sheets where we will write down our outcomes and our findings of our work, as well as our recommendations. So this webinar today is also an input for us to optimize our information sheets and our recommendations to you as regulators. We will keep you informed about this, about the information sheets. They will not be published right away, but we will need some time, of course, to prepare them. But you will be able to find them probably somewhere this summer. So back to today, here's a brief look on our agenda. We will start with the welcome and opening remarks, which we are in the middle of right now. I will give you a brief introduction to the work of Work Package 7 and our aims. Then you will have 3 short presentations from the 3 main tasks in our work package. The first one is given by my colleague, Dr. Charlotte Pauwels, and she will show an overview of the products and the variation of the products that have been that are on different European markets as submitted by manufacturers, so based on data that is submitted by manufacturers. Then the second presentation will be by Maya Elbous from ANSES in France, and she will discuss the evaluation of the use Oh my, have I been muted all this time? Okay, great, thank you. Being muted and unmuted as I speak. Okay, so I was introducing you to the agenda of today. I was telling you about the presentation of Maya El-Bouz about the evaluation and use of health risks of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes. The third presentation is from Dr. Elke Pieper from BFR in Germany, and she will tell you about the adverse health incidents after use of e-cigarettes and novel tobacco products. The way that we have collected data on this, how this is being done in different member states, and of course, how we can improve the process and make sure that we do this in a more harmonized way. Then after these 3 short presentations, we will break out into 3 different breakout sessions where we would really like to hear from you in the breakout sessions. The breakout sessions have 3 different topics that are more or less in line with the presentations that have been shared. So the first one is about keeping up with market developments. What do we know about all the new products that have been marketed in our diverse European markets? And what can we do to create comprehensive legislation that keeps up with all these developments in the markets? The second presentation is about how to make product regulation more effective. So this is a little bit more about the regulation that is already in place, the Tobacco Products Directive, and also regulation about ingredients and emissions. How can we make sure that we are effectively implementing and enforcing the regulation that is already in place, and what else can we do to make sure to protect the public from the harmful effects of these products. And the final session is about collecting and harmonizing data on adverse health incidents, which is of course also something that we would like to hear from you. Is this already being done in some countries, and what can we learn from each other? I'm getting some...
You stopped sharing by accident, I guess, Anna.
Oh, okay, let me share.
Perfect.
Thank you. All right, back on track. So finally, we will have a plenary session where the outcomes of the breakout sessions will be shared. We will also invite you to ask questions or discuss maybe on the topics that were discussed in the breakout sessions where you were not participating in, so that everybody gets a chance to hear and discuss about each of the topics. And then finally, we will close the meeting around noon. So let me move on with a little introduction into Work Package 7. So briefly, Work Package 7 is about the health effects and regulatory implications of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes, like this webinar. We have 20 partner institutes from the countries that are depicted on the right side of this image. The work package is led by the National Institute of Public Health and the Environment in the Netherlands, or RIVM. But we could not have done this without our task leaders from ANSES in France and BFR in Germany, who you will also hear from today. A little bit of background. As you know, the European Tobacco Products Directive has been introduced in 2016, which is already 8 years ago. And a lot of has changed since then. We've seen many developments on the markets, many new products being developed, a huge variety in the existing products. We've also seen an increasing use among youth, not just of tobacco products, but also of the newer nicotine-containing products, which causes concerns about their health risks. We also see that there are differences in implementation of regulations between member states and differences in national regulations, which can cause differences in tobacco control within Europe, which has also effects on, for example, cross-border sales. So all these things leads us to the following questions. So can regulation that we still have in place keep up with the developing tobacco product landscape? Or how can we make sure that our regulation is more suitable to do that? and what is needed to protect the public health of the people in Europe. What more can we do besides the regulation that we already have, or how can we make our regulation as effective as possible? And how to improve and harmonize implementation of and enforcement of current regulation. So this is where our work package 7 comes in place, with the overall aim of enhancing a better understanding of the properties, the health impact, and the regulatory implications of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes. So we really want to understand, what are these products, what ingredients or emissions do they have, what does this mean for their users' health, with the aim of supporting effective information and regulation. So we have 4 specific objectives in our work package, which led to 4 tasks, which you will hear about later on as well. So the first objective is to gain insight into the variation of novel tobacco products and e-cigarette products in the different member states. So we want to know what is already on the market and what can we learn from that. The second one is to evaluate the use, abuse potential, and health risks of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes. So what do we know about all the ingredients and emissions that are in these products, and also which factors do we need to consider when we want to understand the impact on health? The third one is about harmonizing the collection of e-cigarettes associated adverse events, and also maybe adverse events associated with other newer products. This is something very new, so we also needed to understand what is already happening. Is something already happening in this field? And how can we get more information on this? And finally, supporting European member states in training, capacity building, and information sharing on novel products and e-cigarettes, which is what we are doing today. So having said that, I want to give the word to my colleague Charlotte with the first presentation about the variation of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes on the different member states' markets.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I will share my screen. Is that working?
All good.
Perfect. So good morning, everyone. My name is Charlotte Pauwels. I work as a scientific advisor at the RIVM as a colleague of Anne, and I was the task leader of this task in which we investigated and gave an overview of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes in different member states. So first, a little background. Manufacturers and importers of tobacco products, e-cigarettes, and refill containers, they have to submit key information to the authorities in the member states in which they plan to market the products. So we collected data of these different products, so the e-cigarettes and novel tobacco products, from 12 countries. We have Belgium, Bulgaria, Czechia, Estonia, France, Italy, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Latvia, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Slovenia. And for Bulgaria, we only received tobacco product data. So of these different products, we analyzed the data of the submissions of the products, the characteristics, and the ingredients. So I will start with the e-cigarettes. Almost 145,000 products are submitted to the EU system by almost 7,000 different companies. So I think that's a lot. And these products, these are only e-cigarette products. They are distributed across 9 types of 9 types of e-cigarettes and e-cigarette parts that you can see on the screen right now. And the main product categories, or the main types that are submitted, are into type 7, so the refill e-liquids, so just single bottles of e-liquids, and the disposable, so that's type 1. So that's the device including the liquids. So these are the most submitted ones into the EU SEC system. And if we dive into this e-cigarette data, you can see on the figure the numbers of products and presentations for the various member states. The difference between products and presentations is the fact that a product can be packed into different packages, and then we call it a presentation. That's also why the product numbers are a little lower than the presentation numbers. The ones that have the most products submitted into the system is Czechia, so almost 78,000 different products. And the lowest number of products is submitted to the market of Lithuania, almost 10,000 different products. Most of the products are notified for only one, so 39%, or two in 16% of the cases, member states. So that means that most cigarettes are not EU-wide available, and that there is less than 45% overlap in the products that notified in 3 or more countries. So that means that a product is submitted for the market in the Netherlands and Germany, for example, but not for the other ones. So that also explains a bit why the number of products submitted for into the whole system is quite high. The manufacturers also have to submit ingredient data on these products into the EU-SEC system. And they use many ingredients for that. For example, in Czechia, there are 1,200 different ingredients used to make the e-cigarette products, which might make sense because Czechia also has the most products on the market. So it might be logic that there are also the most ingredients to make them. And similar is seen for Lithuania. The lowest number of products and thus ingredients are used on that market. I think a little obvious is that the most used ingredients are glycerin, propylene glycol, water, but also nicotine variants, of course, and flavorings. And if we talk about the nicotine products, or the products that contain nicotine, it is the case for 67% of all the e-cigarette products. So that also means that there's quite a big part of the e-cigarettes without the nicotine on the market. And in the median amount of nicotine is 10 milligrams per milliliter. We have a maximum of 20 milligrams per milliliter in the EU, as stated in the TPD. But remarkably is that 3.1% of the products report a concentration that is higher than the upper limit of 20%. So they're not allowed, but it was very honest, of course, that those manufacturers submitted them to the system, but they're not allowed. Then in 10.6% of all the e-cigarettes, nicotine salts are notified. And there are 10 different nicotine salts used for that. So that means that all products that have in their name something about salts, they also contain nicotine salts. But on the other hand, there are also products that do not have the nicotine salt in the name, but do contain nicotine salts in the ingredient list. The most frequently used nicotine salt is nicotine benzoate. I guess you're aware that the nicotine salts are a modified form of nicotine that is chemically combined with an organic acid. And this modification allows the nicotine salt to be more stable and less harsh when vaped at high concentrations. In 14% of the overall e-cigarettes, the nicotine was present as one or more, let's check. Yeah, so in 14% there were other organic acids present in the nicotine or in the liquid. That means that nicotine salts can be formed. That also means that the percentage of 10.6 liquids with nicotine salts will be higher if you also include the formation of the nicotine salts in the liquid itself because an acid was added. Then we go to the e-cigarette part. Also information about them has to be submitted to the system. So that's information on the battery type, the adjustability, the voltage, and more. And this is not required according to the TPD. And we see that in 1/3 of the products, some information about e-cigarette parts is submitted. This can also be a 0. So it's not always informative, the information that is submitted. But to give you an idea about the information that we did receive, so most parts are similar. For example, the e-cigarette liquid containers, they're mostly 2 ml, and sometimes we see them in a 10 ml size. And then the wattage of the battery is on average 6 to 8 watt. And a battery voltage is around 3.6 volts. So then we go to the novel tobacco products. Well, this category in EU-SEC is called novel tobacco products, but in fact, only heated tobacco products are submitted into this category. So I will just call them HTPs during the rest of the presentation. There are 2,523 notifications of these different HTPs. And we have 25 submitters and 33 different main brand names for these heat sticks meant for HTPs. The ones that are most frequently used or submitted, I should say, is the Neo, the Heats, Terea, COO, I don't know how you should pronounce it, Leme, same, and Nuso. And only the Heats and the MCs are present in all 12 countries. We see a high variety in brand names, mainly in Czechia, but also in Italy and the other countries. And a very low variety in brand names in Belgium and Sweden. Which also makes sense because the countries where a high number of products are submitted to, they also have more brand names available. So if we look at the differences in the product names and their characteristics, so the brand name Neo has 100 product ideas and 50 different subtype brand names. And for the heat sticks, for the heats, so from Philip Morris, we see that there are 251 product IDs submitted into the system. And in their brand name, there's already a subtype brand name typed. And the subtype brand name field is only Hardpack 20 heat sticks. So this is not really filled in correctly. And in our deliverable in this package, we will try to give some more information on this. But overall, we can say that there is no consistency on the length, the weight, the tobacco weight, or the other characteristics of these products. And unfortunately, there are very different ways of writing the same brand. So sometimes they use capital letters, sometimes they use a lowercase letter. They put them together. There's some space in between. It's very interesting how they submit it to the system. Oh, that was a bit too fast. I was here. Yeah. So then we go to the ingredients that were submitted for these HTPs. So most often the ingredients are categorized as being tobacco or a fiber or filtration material. And the most different ingredients are seen have the following functions, so that they're a color, they're a binder, or a flavor, or a taste enhancer. And not so surprising, the most used flavor taste enhancer is menthol. And this one is mainly seen in Italy, Czechia, and Lithuania. There's also a lot of overlap in ingredients. Let me check. So menthol was reported 200 times, but interestingly, for example, this heats turquoise, which are, according to the sellers and the websites, they contain a refreshing menthol blend with subtle zesty notes. And this heat brand variant turquoise was submitted in all 12 member states with 12 different product IDs. But only menthol was declared as an ingredient in Belgium. So the point that I want to make is that sometimes a product is marketed with certain taste and flavor, menthol in this case, but if you go to the ingredient list, it is not seen like that in the EU SEC system. So I think that's quite interesting. So let's go to the herbal products. Belgium has the highest number of these of the herbal products, as well in presentations as in the products. On the other hand, the Latvia has the lowest amount of products and presentations. There are 366 unique brand names identified. But we guess this should be less because many brand names, again, also include brand variant names. So the number of brands should be lower. And only a few of these products are available in only a single member state. So in contrast to the e-cigarettes, where one product was only available in 1 or 2, in most cases, here you see that all products are almost available in all member states, and only a few are available in a single member state. Yeah, and again, so incorrect brand names and brand variant names were sent into the system. We also got some ingredients data of these herbal products. So herbal products meant for smoking. In 184 cases, nicotine was submitted, and the cannabidiol, so CBD, was submitted for 17 times. And also here, there is a category that the manufacturers can fill in, so the emission data, but this is not compulsory. However, on average, for almost 40% of the herbal products, emission data is submitted by the manufacturers. For example, tar, nicotine, and carbon monoxide. But it's difficult to know how we should see this information or interpret this information, because there's not an ISO method as for cigarettes available, for example. So it's not clear how the measurements are done to fill in this data on TNCO in the system. Here on the slide, you can see some levels, some average levels for the herbal products. But yeah, as said, it's not very clear what we should, how we should interpret them. So we come to the conclusions and implications. I'm very curious whether you were also amazed by these numbers of different products in all the member states, as I was and still am actually. So especially the products that have similar names across the member states, they're different in ingredients in the different countries, while the same TPD regulations apply for all of them. So there's probably a matter of user taste why manufacturers do this. And I guess that the quality of data in EUSEC should be improved. I think the laziness of the submitter is evident from the many errors that we see in the system. Most submissions are incorrect or incomplete, and there's very poor quality of data or inadequate documentation, while this data can be so useful for research, but also for regulators to see what is happening in the member states. So as a recommendation, it would be valuable if we can have some improvements to increase this data reliability, and also that will improve and enable fast and more effortless analysis. So this is only just a small recap of all we did, and when the deliverable is out and our information sheet is out, it will be shared with you. So I was wondering whether there are any questions or remarks on the presentation.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Unfortunately, we are running over time a little bit, so we have time maybe for one urgent question. If someone wants to ask something, please raise your hand or let us know in the chat. I see one raised hand by Joanne Vella.
Yes, sorry, Joanne from Malta. Perhaps I think the problem with putting correct submissions as well, because the regulators do not have the control of the system, for example, to pause the notification process. The EUSEC does not allow for the inactive function of the system. So once it is paused by the submitter, there's no other way we can control that input apart from asking them to correct the information. That's my view, at least.
Yeah, I think you're right. They should do a better job, but how do we motivate them to do that?
Yeah, that's an important question indeed. Thank you, Joanne. We will move on with the next presentation. There are a few brief questions in the chat. Maybe Charlotte, you can answer them in the chat while we move on with the presentation from Maya Elbouz about the evaluation of use perception and health implication of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, all good, yeah.
All good, yeah. Good morning, everyone. So I am Maya Elbouz, working at the ANSES as a toxicologist. I'm going to present you the evaluation of the use and health risks of novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes. So to give you like a context, so this is an assessment of consumption, potential abuse, and health risks for heated tobacco products and e-cigarettes use. So we have many aims. So it was to develop a framework for assessing product consumption, evaluate the product ingredients, additives, devices, and emissions, from which a classification by function and toxicological properties was made. To raise awareness about these products' use and perceptions, and to do an evaluation of the product perception and properties with an overall assessment of effect on health, addiction, attraction, with a focus on toxicity related to flavors and use, from which a scientific article on this assessment about the health and regulatory impacts of tobacco products and e-cigarettes will be provided. So to begin with, so the different factors contributing to attractiveness, addictiveness, and toxicity. So a milestone, the milestone 7.5 was provided. It was approaching the common approach for evaluation of health impact and abuse liability of e-cigarettes, novel tobacco products, and other related tobacco and nicotine products. So the context, it was based on the evaluation of the framework developed by RRVM on the health impact and abuse liability of novel tobacco products. So to talk very quickly about this scheme, so it starts with legislation, then there is the product characteristics and the situational factor that may impact the attractiveness. Then from this product, emissions are produced. And with this emission and the use behavior, the exposure, the sensory experience, it will impact and lead to an addiction and a health risk with a potential toxicity. So the main outcomes of this part, so the factors contributing to attractiveness are mainly the product related factors, as I said previously, so the sensory experience, the flavors, because there are many, the price, economic aspect, etc. The situational factors such as accessibility, marketing, social media, etc. There are many factors contributing to addiction, but the main ones are the nicotine content, the concentration of nicotine, and the form of nicotine, because there are salt nicotine forms. No, sorry, salt nicotine. The route and rate of delivery. The presence of pH modifiers, minor tobacco alkaloids, formation of MAO, etc. And then the factors contributing to toxicity are the carcinogenic, mutagenic, and reprotoxic compounds, the hazardous compounds based on different hazard classification that I will explain to you right after this slide, and other parameters such as DIY practice, which is a main issue for this conception. So the recommendation concerning these factors, we are running out of time, so I won't be able to talk about every bullet point. So to respect my speaking time, I will talk about some points, such as to reduce attraction to these products. For example, we can ban flavors. Sweet flavors, for example, or mint flavors, etc. Ban the use of ingredients that improve sensory experience. Increase the age restrictions, and banning all form of marketing, including online and social media, for young people, young adults. To reduce addiction, we could require lowering the nicotine concentration to minimally addicting levels, and to reduce toxicity, we can enforce ban for CMR substances, define list of other substances harmful to health, and use precautionary principles to ban substances that are potentially harmful for health. So now for the possible harmful effects associated with the use of e-cigarettes and or heated tobacco products, because they are poly-use. A milestone, the milestone 7.6, approaching the product classification based on ingredients, emissions, and product properties completed, was provided. So around 2,000 substances were identified, then prioritized, then categorized in 3 categories. The first category for the most hazardous substances, category 2 for the I can say the moderate level, and the category 3 but are still hazardous, these same substances, and finally category 3 for substances that don't have enough data and need further researches. Sorry. So yeah, from this milestone and in relation with this milestone 7.6, a deliverable 7.3 that reports a relevant health risk for novel tobacco products and e-cigarettes use was provided. So the approach for this was to investigate the health risk associated with high priority substances identified in previous milestone 7.6, completed by a literature review. So the main outcomes are the health hazards and other properties. So for the health hazards, around 160 substances were identified as CMRs, and 26 associated with chronic toxicity and or respiratory sensitization, and finally 60 with endocrine disruptor potential. For the other properties identified in previous milestone 7.5, not 6, there are main problems. So the device properties, because we can like control the temperature, the weightage, etc. The DIY, which is the main issue, and the aging for the shelf life of e-liquids that may be limited. The recommendation for this part are, so there are many issues and many recommendations. So I will mention that e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products contain harmful ingredients, some of which fall under the categories that are prohibited by the TPD. The current regulation only prohibits ingredients, and that's an issue. A large and growing range of products and ingredients and emissions. And e-cigarettes without nicotine may contain same harmful ingredients and the resulting emissions as e-cigarettes containing nicotine. For the recommendation, we can mention that we can like strengthen the implementation and enforcement of TPD ingredients bans. Enforcing emissions bans or mandate reduction of hazardous emissions in tobacco products and e-cigarettes, set up a system for monitoring ingredients and emissions, extend regulation to nicotine-free products because, as I said previously, it may contain harmful substances. Strengthen the health literacy and user education among public in order to raise awareness and discourage the use, especially for young people, because like old smoker can relapse to smoking by using e-cigarettes or heated tobacco products. Enforce product safety requirements and require manufacturers to inform users about safe use. And now, finally, the deliverable 7.4 was provided after the deliverable 7.3. So it's a report on product use, familiarity and perception of novel tobacco properties and e-cigarettes. So the Eurobarometer was used when there were available data and completed by a literature review. So as I said, there are many users. There are the dual and poly-use, and for both products, there is a strong association between poly-use and dual use. And most of dual users used in places where smoking is banned. For the use of e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products in Europe, it is increasing in many countries, and almost half of the users reported that they daily use these products. For the perception of harmfulness, they perceive there is an overall perception that it's less harmful than conventional cigarettes, and generally considered as less harmful, as I just said. And due to perceived health benefits, it's less like severe health warning and misleading marketing. Sorry. Okay, I just Yeah, and for trajectory use for this same deliverable, e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products are still perceived by some users as tobacco cessation aids. These products do not help smokers to quit, and it's a possible getaway to start for young people or adults, I don't know, or relapse to smoking. And the use among young people and teenagers is a big issue because there is an exposure to advertising, increases intentions to use in social media, in like marketing, everything. In some European countries, most of 13 to 15 years old have tried e-cigarettes, and technological companies appealing aesthetic and variety of flavors are appealing to youth. I am checking the time. I won't be able to talk about everything here. I think you will have an access to these slides, but we have just to remember that the issues are the European data, dual and poly-use in smoke-free places, awareness of health risk is which is moderate, youth consumption, and the recommendation for everything, every part I have been speaking on, is to develop and implement effectively targeted communication and prevention strategies, support independent studies and monitoring e-cigarette and novel tobacco products in Europe, enforcing age restriction, as said previously, impose tight restriction on appearance and content of products to minimize appeal to youth, flavor bans, standardized product designs, plain packaging and health warnings, and ban on all advertising, including on social media. Okay, I finished my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maya. I am realizing that we have a lot to tell and only so much time indeed, but thank you for keeping track of time. As Maya said, we will share the slides and the presentations later, and also the recommendations will be drafted into information sheets that will be shared with regulators later on. So not to worry about missing any information. We have time for 1 or 2 brief questions. So if anyone has a question, please raise a hand. Okay, it seems like we don't have questions. That's also fine. Then we will go on to the next presentation of Dr. Elke Pieper about adverse health incidents and collection of data on adverse health incidents in European member states.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I hope you can see my slide. Yeah, I just wanted to start with an example from the US, where which was then called EVALI in 2019, 2020. Maybe many know of this. This was caused by a vaping product containing THC diluted, and it was diluted in vitamin E acetate. And this vitamin E acetate was then also found in lung fluids, and this caused an impairment of the gas exchange. And my question is, to you, how quickly after the first cases did it become apparent that there was a link between the severe pneumonia and e-cigarette use? And therefore, I would ask Tom to launch a poll, please. So you can just guess, I think. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Then can you share the results with us? Yeah. So most of you think it took like 12 weeks or 8 weeks. But if I go to the next slide, so can you remove the pool, the results from the pool? I still have it on my screen, or can I also? Because otherwise I don't see my slide.
Elke, you can just remove it yourself, I guess.
No, I'm trying, but I cannot remove it. Oh, it's like this? No. It's just in the middle of my slide.
Sorry, it should be off now. Is it still showing on your screen?
It's showing, yeah, maybe no, it's gone. Okay, thank you. Yeah, here you can see in this figure that there were some cases already in the summer, in May, June, July, but only in August. It really started increasing, but already then in September, the CDC came up with a case definition, and they found that one of the reasons was the use of vitamin E acetate in the vaping products, and then it decreased again. So it was around like 4 weeks or 8 weeks actually, and because they have a national poison data system that collects harmonized data and is fast and technical, simple access to harmonized and promptly recording poisoning cases is really important, especially as you can see this in this case. And so they were able to identify patterns because these lung injuries were initially unexplained because they occurred in adolescent and young adults. The median age was 24. And yeah, this is a really good example. This harmonized data collection is really important. So why do we need to report adverse health incidents? I hope that is kind of clear now. There is not only the vitamin E acetate, which can cause such lung injuries. There are also other ingredients. And as we just heard in the previous reports, there are always new products coming to the market, and also new ingredients are used. And the background is that actually the TPD states that industry must collect and share information about adverse health incidents, but so far such information is not reported by industry. And in contrast to the US, in Europe, there is no harmonized approach for registration of adverse health incidents after the use of novel tobacco products or e-cigarettes. And so why do we need a centralized collection of this information? Because such a centralized collection would make it easier to collect or to see patterns between incidents, and also to detect problematic product use. Yeah, how can we capture how all the member states report such data? There we had a questionnaire, and this questionnaire was then sent out to contact person, and we wanted to map the current practices on collecting information on adverse health events. And yeah, then in some countries it was a centralized collection, and others they had to contact poison centers or hospitals. So it was not always the same way, but we wanted to get back a combined summarized answer from each member state. And yeah, one question we asked: what is done with the reported information on health incidents? And it's mostly stored only in local databases. In some countries, it's even only stored on paper. Data is accessible mostly internal, partially also reported to authorities. But mostly it's not open access, and it's stored mostly in national languages and seldomly in English. Just another example of the data we ask: is the data processed or analyzed? If so, with what aim? And yeah, for example, in Germany, there are annual reports sent out to accidental insurance companies, and others are only on request. And this is the case also in other countries. Also in France, they have specifically tailored analysis depending on the availability of data, or in Denmark on occasion, if they see like a potential patterns, and also in the Netherlands, mainly to inform governmental institutions. On this slide, I wanted to show you the case numbers. We also ask, how many cases were recorded between January 21 and December 2022. And this was also a hurdle, because not in all countries they were able to really extract the data for this period. So the numbers you see here, you cannot really compare for all the countries, but should just give you like a brief overview. Italy, for example, has no centralized system. So these are data from a hospital and a poison center. In Denmark, they don't differentiate between the product types. Of course, in Sweden, where snus is very popular, we would also expect that they use pouches and have high numbers. In Germany, we have 4 poison centers who have to report to BFR, so it's kind of a centralized system. That's why we have quite high numbers for e-cigarettes and HTPs. Interesting is also what kind of events are reported. Most countries reported that children in the age of 0 to 10 are frequently involved in intoxications. So child safety is very important. And another important thing is, from the data received, it's really difficult to differentiate if it's unintentional or intentional cases. Symptoms reported, just as an information, is like vomiting, diarrhea, sore throat, drowsiness, sweating, cough, or a fever. And the result is data is not collected in all member states. There are different authorities collecting the data. Also, the way and what is collected differs, and data is not always analyzed and reported to authorities. But what is missing mostly is the data from users themselves, because we could learn so much more about also the product and what really causes the problem. Also, mild health incidents are seldomly reported, and also data on intended use. So there are, of course, advantages and disadvantages if users and medical professionals would be able to fill in such a system. Users, of course, we would learn more about the product information, but also about comorbidities, or if they have dual use. The medical professionals, they would, of course, describe the adverse health incidents more correctly. But maybe here the specific information about the product would be missing. Last year in September, we also had this webinar about the results from the questionnaire. And there we came to the conclusion in a discussion that this is really important, that both would fill in the system. And there's a clear identification of the product in question is important, and a centralized system would be preferred, which is also open access, so that everyone can have access to the analyzed data. And as a recommendation for regulators, we see that the comprehensive case documentation of high quality is really important, as it is also required in regulatory risk assessment, to see how products are used and what are the potential risks of the product use. And to implement this, we recommend a stepwise approach. So we see it's very important also to compare data and to see patterns, to use a harmonized wording and a harmonized reporting format. And it should be mandatory, maybe also in the TPD, that member states collect and analyze the data. And it is very important to have such a centralized reporting system where medical professionals, but also users could put in data. There are already systems out there, like the Yellow Card system in the UK, then there's a Poison Help system in the US, and also in Norway. They just started this year, where users can also put in information about adverse health incidents from e-cigarettes. So then, thank you. And I think maybe we have also time for one question.
Thank you, Elke. Indeed, we could have a question. If there's any questions, please raise a hand. No questions for Elke? Okay, then I guess it was a very clear presentation. Thank you, Elke. That means that it's now time to split up into the breakout sessions. Some of you indicated a preference beforehand or in the chat today, so we will try to allocate you to the breakout session of your preference. Everyone else will be randomly allocated. We have about half an hour time to discuss the topics as introduced before, but they will also be introduced to you within the sessions. And then we will get back together in the plenary session and have a final discussion of what has happened in each of the breakout sessions. So, Tom, if I can please ask you to start. I hope you've had very productive discussions in the breakout groups. We would like to address the main topics that have been discussed here in the plenary, so to also give other people the opportunity to react to it who were not in the respective breakout groups. So I would like to invite Frances O'Donovan Sadat. She's also the head coordinator of the Joint Action on Tobacco Control 2, to report back on the breakout session on the development of new products.
Thank you, Anne. So I will just run through the questions that we had in the breakout sessions and some of the answers that people they had. So the first thing we discussed was which new products can you see on your market? And from Malta, we heard that HHC vapes without nicotine are appearing in their market. From Norway, we heard about new products, specifically nicotine strips and snus products, and some in the form of candy. So not pouches, but candy. And what they said was that this is a product that one of the benefits of this product is it doesn't pollute because it's not a pouch, it is in candy form. These are products that need to be evaluated, so they are not currently on the market, but they may come to the market soon. Then from Italy, we heard about IQOS sticks without tobacco, but with nicotine, that are not in the market yet, and are being promoted as tobacco-free. And also they are seeing nicotine pouches spreading through Italy. In Denmark, we see vape products with HSC, THC, and H4 different variants. And then in Latvia, we heard about nicotine sticks, nicotine energy sniff, CBD pouches, and nicotine chewing gum. Then moving on, we talked about what products they've seen appearing that are not regulated through the TPD, and specifically we heard about IQOS sticks based on rosewater tea that Charlotte mentioned would be available in June. I believe it was June. We then went on to talk about what is the national regulation setup regarding these new products. And for Norway, they told about they have a system where new products need to be approved. So the ones who want to market the product send in an application that is then sent on to the Institute of Public Health that then evaluate the product. They look at the health effects, the toxicity levels, and then they send it back to the Directorate of Health, who then treats the cases and evaluates whether this should be a product that would be allowed onto the market. They were also telling about how nicotine pouches are not allowed in Norway. However, it can be possible to import it through online sales. Sometimes it can go unnoticed, and that people close to the border might have the possibility of going into Sweden and getting products, but that could also be discovered by border control. And moving on, we had from Slovenia, they were telling about how they had seen vape with a high level of THC, over 50%. And that they at one point had proposed new legislation where they would want a committee to review all products. However, unfortunately, this legislation didn't go through, and that would have been a good mechanism to evaluate new products before that they are circulated on the market. We then went on to discuss how we can regulate these products with regard to protecting the market from future products. And from Denmark, we had some good points about new products should definitely be regulated at a EU level, but not necessarily through TPD. We do see some places where, for example, nicotine is regulated through food legislation, which offers a higher level of protection because nicotine is a type of poison, and that gives them the possibility to regulate it more strictly. In a way of future-proofing, there was a good point from Denmark about rather than looking at the specifics of the product or the ingredients, you should be based on the fact that this is a product that is dangerous for public health. So allow the regulation to be a discussion on protecting health rather than a product definition, and also regulating on the basis of ingredients. There was a counterpoint from Finland about that while that would be a good long-term plan, there is need for more specific legislation, something that specifically gives in-depth definitions of what products and ingredients shouldn't be allowed. For example, more definitions about CMR substances and what levels should be allowed. And then with regard to how to future-proof, there was a good point about there should be a mechanism with risk assessment before any new ingredients are allowed onto the market. And this would allow member states to, instead of being reactive, also be able to prevent new products being introduced. We towards the end, had a discussion about how to stay informed about new products. And interestingly enough, we heard from Italy that social media was a good place to get news about what new products are being circulated. We heard from Slovenia that they have different sources of information. Non-governmental organizations is a good place to get information, but also through local governments, those who are in contact with young people at school to see what products they are being introduced to and used. And then also from the Ministry of Health, who have conversations with the people who want to market the products. They have several sources of information. From that, we heard that they follow the USEC platform and look at what products are being introduced. And also through the joint action, it's good that the member states share information between each other. So that was a quick run through. So I hope there are some questions, especially the discussion on how we can protect through new legislation was very, very interesting.
Thank you very much, Frances. Do we have any questions on this topic? Or remarks, reactions? No questions about keeping up with the latest developments? Okay. Then I think we can move on with the wrap up of the second breakout session. I will invite Clara Neto from ANSYS in France to tell us what has been discussed in the breakout session on more effective regulation of tobacco and nicotine products.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, we discussed the enforcement of a substance ban. We identified that only Netherlands actually enforcing the ban on substances prohibited according to the TPD, including a flavoring ban with 16 substances allowed for illegal. Regarding a ban on other substances Participants in the breakout session agree that countries need a clear list of substances that can be banned, that must be included and updated in the TPD. Also, as part of JTC2, attractiveness, addictiveness, and toxicity have been identified as key properties in the risk assessment of products. In that sense, we discussed of pros and cons of regulating products based on this property. What emerges is that addictiveness and attractiveness might be easier to regulate than toxicity. Concerning addictiveness, the possibility will be to reduce the nicotine level under the addictive level at once, might be a good option. However, users can add their own nicotine to get around this. The same way, flavors is sold separately from nicotine, so users can add a large amount of nicotine. During this breakout session, we also discussed the device properties and their practices, as the JTC2 showed that device properties and their practices may increase exposure of users to harmful emissions. In that way, we were wondering about the regulation of device-related properties, and pretty all participants agree that such a regulation would be a good idea, especially for the refill device. And in addition, clarifications are needed for the child-proof. And unfortunately, we didn't have time to talk about the difficulties experienced in regulating products and the TPD, but we started to discuss Article 23 of the TPD, but I saw a comment on it in the chat. Perhaps Ivani has something to add on it.
Sorry. With regard to Article 23, the last sentence puts emphasis that when the importer and the manufacturer are established as outside the Union, they are both jointly responsible for the provision of the correct and complete information. What I find a bit awkward in this last sentence is that I do not have jurisdiction on non-EU countries. So how can I actually enforce that provision in case the information is incorrect or incomplete? I think there should always be a responsible person in the Union. So I think that last sentence might be improved in the future to help us a little bit.
Thank you so much for this input.
Okay, thank you, Clara, for this summary. Are there any further questions or remarks about regulation, more forward-looking measures of regulation, restricting nicotine levels? Was a topic that I heard. Anyone who want to react to that? Okay. I also saw a comment in the chat about the first session where Charlotte asked if there was any ways that you are keeping track of developments on the markets that have not been mentioned before. Then please let us know, because it's always interesting to know what other countries are doing on this subject and how you are staying involved and up to date. Or if there are any suggestions about how we can keep each other up to date, then we would love to hear that too. So if you have any thoughts on these things, also after this meeting, feel free to reach out to us. We are always happy to hear. Then I will report back on what has been discussed in the third breakout session that was about collecting data on adverse events. First of all, we wanted to assess what has been done already. We already knew that a little bit from the inventory that has taken place in Work Package 7, but we also wanted to see if there was some additional information that we hadn't covered yet. So we heard again from Italy that data has been provided by regional poison centers, or at least some of them, but it's also difficult to involve all poison centers without there being an actual formal need or legislation to do this. We heard from Hungary that they collect data from hospitals. And in Ireland, there is already a system where users can report if they have any issues or complaints from using these products, but it seems that it's not being used very much. People are not reporting much, and it's not really known yet why. So that's, I think, an important question to try to understand. Spain commented that they have surveys to investigate the use of these products among youth. It's also something that we are doing in the Netherlands, also to ask about complaints. But overall, there is definitely not a systematic way of collecting this information. And I think a lot of people also remain silent in this discussion, as it seems that people just do not know if or how this information is collected in their countries. So that already shows a huge need of more transparency and a standardized way of collecting this information. So our next question was, what are hurdles that you are encountering if you would implement this type of data collection? And the most prominent point was the lack of a legal framework that requires surveillance or monitoring of this data. It would be very useful if this is really something that is required by law, which all countries have to do, like it is for medical devices, for example. Because also when there's a legal framework that will also make way for funding, which is also lacking right now, and personal resources as well. So there is sometimes not enough people available to actually do this work. So in an ideal situation, what we would like to see would be a system or platform provided by the European Commission so that we can all work on this. But of course, we're not there yet. Another hurdle is also that we only have data from poison centers and hospitals, but not everybody goes to a doctor, especially not with mild symptoms. And also maybe young people are a bit shy to admit that they are using these products. So we need a way of self-reporting without going to a doctor or any medical professional. But we do see that in the example of Ireland, self-reporting is not the only way, because people still do not do it. So we also need to make sure that people are supported or endorsed to do this reporting, or at least that it's very clear where they can report and what they can report to actually stimulate them to do so. So one suggestion that came up was to show this information on packages of products, maybe using a QR code that would lead them to a website where they can report their symptoms. That would be a very easy way to implement. So that is already like a few steps ahead. We were also talking about what can be done, what are more smaller steps that country can take before we are at a centralized platform. One thing that was mentioned also in Elke's presentation is, of course, a harmonized way of collecting data and a harmonized wording and reporting. We have already made a start of this in the Joint Action 1. There's a deliverable 7.4, which is a reporting format that can be used by all countries. So we would definitely recommend and stimulate everyone to have a look at that, so that you can use, that everybody will ask the same questions and obtain the same information from adverse incidents that take place. Of course, it's important to increase also awareness of health risks among young people. If people know that that the symptoms that they are experiencing are related to use of e-cigarettes and novel tobacco products, they might also be more well, they will take these products more serious and will be discouraged to use them, but also increased awareness may also be a way to also obtain more information about these effects. So people should be made aware of these effects, and at the same time of the fact that they can also report them somewhere. And finally, we were thinking that an online system would be the way to go, because it's easily accessible for many people, especially for youth. It has a low threshold. You can just do it from your own house without anybody else seeing it. And we can learn from the system that is already used for medical device surveillance. So that's a really good recommendation to look into. Then we had a very brief discussion about the responsibility of the tobacco industry. Currently in the TPD, the industry is required to collect data on adverse events of their users, but we also know that this is not being done very thoroughly. The reactions in our group were a little bit mixed on whether to place this responsibility on the industry. On the one hand, people were skeptical because, as I said, we already see that this is not being done in the best way. So we are also not expecting with more strict recommendations or legislation that we can have reliable information from the industry. On the other hand, there are options to update regulations, for example, by including track and trace systems, so we can address very specifically with which products and in which countries problems arise, and we can also act on those specific cases. So that might be another way that additional legislation can be useful for this. So that was the discussion in this third group. Are there any questions or reactions to this? Again, no questions, no responses. I see a question to Ireland if they can share the link to their system. That would be very interesting, I think, for many others to see. Okay, then we are coming to the end of this meeting. Are there any questions or remarks bringing everything together?
Yeah, I'm also curious whether the information sheet that we will develop, they're short, concise, we'll have clear recommendations, whether everyone is interested in receiving those, and what kind of ideas should we really implement in them, so add to them. Are there ideas on that? I mean, we have shared quite some information now. So we just send them around and then they end up on your desk, or is it also something that will be used, or what should we add to them so that they will be used? We as scientists want to be of help for the regulators, but we just need to know how.
Yes, exactly. That's also why we wanted to host this webinar, to get your input as well and to make sure that our outcomes and recommendations are of the most use to you. If something doesn't come to mind directly, you are also very welcome to reach out to us after this meeting. Yes. You can reach us on our email addresses, and also all the deliverables of Joint Action in general, but also of Work Package 7, so from the work that we have presented today, they will be published on the website of the Joint Action, jaotc.eu. There might be a slight delay in when they are published, but we will definitely publish them. But if you have any questions on these topics before they are published, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always very happy to answer. I see a hand, or is it an applause? No, it's an applause.
Those
All
are
right.
also welcome, right?
For sure. Okay, well then I would like to thank everybody for being present today and sharing your thoughts in the breakout rooms. I hope this webinar has been useful for you as well. I think it has definitely been interesting for us too. So thank you very much, and we will be in touch and share our outcomes hopefully soon.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone. I learned a lot again.